So how would you go about tuning a sampler? Or I suppose, what do I even mean when I say tuning a sampler? Now, wouldn't it be cool if the note you pressed on the keyboard was the same as the note or pitch of the vocal sample that came out of the sampler? That way you could play a melody or do a chord progression in a particular key or scale, which becomes especially useful when you're layering a vocal bit of something over the top of an existing musical element, say a chord progression or a background pad or whatever it is. And the idea works like this. There are two steps. First of all, you need to find the note or the pitch of the vocal sample, and then tell the sampler what that note is. Once you've done that, the sampler will be in tune. The sampler will know how fast or how slow to play a particular vocal sample to make it be a particular note or a particular pitch. Let me give you an example. So I've already found the initial bit of vocal I want to work with. I've adjusted the start and end flags such that I'm just playing that little bit of vocal sample from a much longer bit of vocal something. And therefore, step one, find out the note for that bit of vocal. Taking note that I'm just taking a little bit of the overall vocal sample, what I did is chop it out as a separate bit. Just to minimize that for now.
I know the others. I know the others. I know the others.
I chopped it out. So I can focus in on the important bit of the vocal. And then I loaded up a spectrum analyzer. And I'll make it massive just so it's easier to see. Yeah, let's make it crazy big, just for fun. What a spectrum analyzer does is deconstruct the sound into all its constituent frequencies, so you can see what frequencies are in it, at least approximately, and then hopefully you can learn something about the vocal using this information. What I'm looking for here is the lowest main peak, the lowest peak responsible for the vowel sound. Hopefully you can see the lowest main peak, called the fundamental, is where my mouse is now. That peak there. And then there's a whole bunch of other peaks to the right of that. And so on, which are harmonics or multiples of that fundamental. The important thing though is this fundamental frequency, because this fundamental frequency is the note, is the pitch that we hear when we hear the vocal sound. And hovering my mouse over that peak and reading off in the bottom left corner, get it just right. It says E3, and therefore that particular vocal sample is the note E3. If you're having trouble locating this lowest peak, maybe you're not sure if it's this peak or the next one up, then you want to check to make sure the higher up peaks have a frequency that's a multiple of the lowest. So looking at this one, it's around 330 Hertz. The next peak up, about 660. And then around 990, 1330, and so on and so on. Therefore, the peaks to the right are the harmonics of the fundamental, the pitch, which is this one here. And then step two, tell the sampler what that note is, which in the case of most samplers will be called something like the root key. That's certainly at least what it's called in Ableton. Set the root key to be E3, and that's it. The sampler is now tuned, and therefore whatever note I press on the keyboard, that will result in a vocal sound playing that particular pitch or note. Finally though, one thing I will mention is that not all vocal samples can be tuned, because not every vocal sample is sustained at a particular pitch. Maybe the pitch is going up and down, or maybe it's playing multiple pitches like in the second example here. It's a cool sound, but it's playing multiple pitches and therefore you can't really tune it. It doesn't really make sense to tune it. If I just show you in the spectrum analyzer, In this example, it's a bit more fiddly to see these peaks, the fundamental and the harmonics, but hopefully you can see how there are two different pitches, or two different sets of peaks if you want to look at it that way. And therefore you can't really tune this. I mean, if you want to get really technical, you could maybe tune one half of the vocal sample. So you'd pick one collection of peaks and tune that half and not the other half. But to be honest, I wouldn't recommend it. I'd only recommend it when the vocal sample you're using has a well-defined pitch or a well-defined note. And that's the idea, tuning samplers.